All right, there we are. There we are. Well, apologies, viewers there, our regular viewers, and those that have just joined us for tonight. It is the Power Hour, which is the running program brought to you at the Perfect Balance Clinic. It's a show in which we are talking all matters running and all matters runners. And we've had all different members of the running community come on the show and share their experiences and share their knowledge, as something that people would probably want to hear, in the current situation where we find ourselves, behind closed doors. What do we do about the passion that we have? What do we do in the meantime with the time that we have? Well, today I'm joined by another guest. It's Clarence Callender. Welcome, Clarence.
Hi.
Great show. Right. We've had different subjects on the show, Clarence. We've had sports psychologists. I've had strength and conditioning coaches. We've had junior athletes come in to share their experiences. We decided this time we talk to the community of coaches, and who better else to do that than yourself. Could you briefly, or rather just introduce yourself? Let the viewers know who you are and why you'll be the correct person to talk about that.
Correct person, yeah. I'm Clarence Callender, and I'm a national performance coach. I've been coaching for over nearly 30 years now, and I started coaching very much when I was an athlete. To cut a long story short, I started very early in the days at Haringey, and Haringey Athletics Club, who was a very good 80s club, went all the way to Europeans, etc., etc. But anyway, during that time, I progressed and became an international athlete. Attended 11 major games. But also during that time, I was also a serving member of the British Army, and which is where a lot of my ethos comes from, and the hard work I actually associate with the group that I teach. For me, it's about hard work and giving back to the community, because I'm an avid sharer, and I don't claim to have a lot, but whatever I have, I will actually try to get up there based on the 10 years I spent at England Athletics.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Absolutely, great to have you, for you to share with us all that experience there, the numbers you're talking there. It's just, it's amazing. And 11 major games. What does that mean, for somebody who doesn't understand this, that kind of language? What are you talking about, Clarence?
Nothing that big. I attended, I think, 2 Commonwealth Games. I think we used to call it Europa Cup. I did 3 Europa Cup, a World Cup, an Olympic Games, and 2 European Championships. Of those 11 games, I think 3 of them were individuals, and all the others were based on relays.
Wow, yeah. You made out at most of these games. Would like to share that with our viewers?
I think I have 4 medals from those games. I have a World Cup silver, an Olympic silver, and a Commonwealth Games gold, and I'm missing one more. Can't remember the other one. There's 4. I think that was 4. Just call it. It's 4. I have 4.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Would you like to just say something about your role with England Athletics as a national coach mentor? Let's see what, some insights you can give us to that, and how that is going to contribute to our discussion tonight.
I spent, I think, 9 to 10 years with England Athletics, and basically it was about educating coaches at the highest level in every way, shape or form. From down to us visiting their local environment to see what the facilities were, what they had to work with, the type of athletes they were working with, whether it be elite, either club athletes or pure grassroots at the bottom. And then we would facilitate for them. We would bring in speakers for them. I think during that time, we probably had over 70 odd speakers that came in. Professional speakers that came in and spoke to the coaches. This was all funded by England, and basically we would meet them probably 3 times a year, 2 times a year, as a group, as a whole. And we will obviously have put on clinics for them so they can actually see at the highest level all the way through. I mean, we started off with people like Don Corey, Lawrence Seagrave. We had virtually any coach who was any coach that came in to see us. We had the Borlea Twins coach, can't remember his name, forgive me, and so on. So basically, our job was to put all the information that they needed at their fingertips in order for them to progress to the highest level. And obviously, the thing of such a task is because coaches are such individuals, and you know, our greatest task was actually to get them to share. And most coaches were more or less pushed away from that, and you know, it was them against the world. And you know, the colleague of mine, Tony Hadley, who I shared that position with, you know, we worked very, very, very hard to bring coaches together and to facilitate for them, and to make sure we turned out the best coaches that possibly can be. Yeah.
No, wonderful. You and Tony, I know I met you guys in the coaching trenches, if I may say that. Yeah, you know. And yes, I can concur and, you know, put honor to the work that you did for coaches in England and in Great Britain as a whole. But with all that you guys set out to do, did you envisage a situation where your coaches that you were equipping with all the knowledge and all the technical skills, them finding themselves in a situation that we find ourselves now, you know, COVID and the pandemic and the social distancing? Would you have figured out that? Do you know, do you think the coaches would have been equipped for anything like this?
Yeah, in some ways they would have, because they have a lot of theoretical knowledge under their belt. I think we try to cover all aspects of the training and how we can work and every single environment. I remember an instance where I had to go and visit a mentee, and he lived in Liverpool, and this was during February, and I think it must have been about -2, and he was doing high knee drills, you know, and the beach is coming, you know, the wind is coming across the beach, and but he was still thinking about the technical aspects of the event, and in that type of weather. So you know, I just believe that we're strong-minded enough, but I think what this current environment does to us, it makes us creative, because as coach, we have to be very, very creative in our own way. And here now is a situation where, you know, you're stuck in one place, and you can't probably do the #1 prerequisite of our task, and that is to run. Yeah. And, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, we're within confined doors, and you know, that beauty, that movement that we look for, you know. You know, coaches are very judgmental. I find that, you know, if you see any athlete run, a coach will just say, he'll tell you what type of runner he is. You go, oh, he's a speed guy. He's keeping too much noise on the ground. Whatever he sees straight away will come out. And you know, the current environment raises those fantastic challenges. And you know, if I had a crystal ball to see what coaches all come up with in order to strategize and what they're going to do, it would be fantastic, because you know they will all be different, because the coaches are different, you know. And working from behind closed doors, you know, if you say, for instance, we're going to stick as close to the technical model as possible, and what can we get from that technical model indoors? Yes. And so, for instance, maybe we might be at the bottom of a stair doing lunges up the stairs, trying to keep our shoulders down, keep our hips down. A simple one. Every 2 stairs, you just drive a dry face, so you created a dry face in a very, very small environment, you know, just thinking on your feet.
Okay, maybe this is the right time to come in before we proceed with all the technical information and insights there, Clarence, is maybe just a highlight to our viewers and other, you know, people out there. there's been a guidance from England Athletics, as the governing body. Like all many other industries, they've given guidance to their communities. What is England's guidance regarding social distancing? And so we can, from there, decide, what are the implications for coaching?
I think from what I've read and what they send out on the posts and stuff like that, it basically it conforms with whatever the government says. So that they're almost running parallel to whatever the government tells us to do. We're still down to I think one coach, and I think the last and it was 5 athletes, 6 in total. And again, for me, all those things about how you're going to meet them, where you're going to meet them. What about the risk assessments in our local areas? Most of the centers are not open yet. Only 1 or 2 centers are open. And then once we do decide that, then we have to decide, parents, do they want their children to have to travel any type of distance to get to you? Because then there then becomes 2 if the parent come. Obviously, they'll sit in the car, etc., and watch. But then there's the implications for homework. Most of the kids are learning from home, and then you have that other stressor on board because they're still actually trying to study and do all the things that they have to do. So England's commitment just lies. Well, I can't speak for England, but based on what they've said in their readouts, is that it lies completely with what the government is telling us and how we can then break down that and be creative with the rules that we've been given.
Yeah. No, brilliant. What does it mean, Clarence, from a coaching standpoint, when you have those restrictions in place, and the restrictions in terms of engagement and the interaction? I'm thinking here that as a coach, your 3 key pillars, in your involvement with an athlete or working with an athlete is the provision of the technical component, as well as attendance to their physical development. And then you have also the inspiration and the motivational, a vehicle that goes with that, in order just to get them ready to perform and ready to have the right competencies to perform and to compete. How does all these restricted interaction affect that perspective, that philosophy? What sort of changes? I heard you say creativity. How does that look like, on the track?
Well, at the moment, it's probably the biggest conundrum out there because it's very, very hard to recreate what the track does on a grass verge, for instance. And lots of studies have actually proven that people who come off the track and go onto grass and big lulls in their training tend to go back with injuries. And how we be creative to actually simulate all those things that will allow us to get back to the track in one piece. But I for one, decided very early in the day that we were going to be as gradual as possible during this phase. I know a lot of people have come out and are totally ready to run straight away. People say, I'm ready. But for me, the challenges there are so great because, like you say, for me, for instance, if I'm thinking about, I coach a lot of my kids along the force velocity curve. So I know what's going on from the acceleration phase to the next phase. If I'm coaching along those lines, I have to be able to simulate those lines in the environment that I'm now presented with. Like I was saying, using the things within the house to do so, to make sure I do that. So I think a good word here is how can I be productive in that environment and make sure I still get all the work required. If I was coaching between 5 to 6 days a week, what I would be productive in, let's say, volume and then let's say how much I do as far as my condition is concerned, how much I do as far as my technical emphasis is concerned. And for instance, we ran a system where we said like high intensity, low intensity, high intensity on that basis, and really spending, because really in this present climate you're very much one-to-one when the athletes are at home, and they will call you in and speak to you or tell you or show you a video of something that they've done. So, you know, we're relying on them really. And I think this is one of my philosophies as well, that you need to educate the athlete from day one.
Yeah.
And cut a long story short with that is that came about when you would go to a championship and you always want your coach has been so close to you, he's followed you all the way through. So when you get to the championship, you're looking back in the crowd for that same coach. When 90% of the time, you know, if they were traveling to whatever they were going in the world, you couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
They couldn't go anywhere. So, you know, that education of, you know, one of the things that my athletes have to do is that they have to have a diary and they rate everything they do. So they have, for instance, you know, the what have I done? When did I do it? How did I do it? Those questions that we ask them all the time, then they have to then come back and give me a score. So was that session, the score would be out of 5, 3 out of 5, 5 out of 5, whatever the session was, and we keep relating to it for the outcome goals, because I'm having to find a different way of assessing how they're training. And for instance, their movement patterns, etc., etc. So, you know, if I give them a conditioning exercise that relates to one of those things, they must be properly able to feed back to me. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult. I'm only watching them from a video, and as you say, it's never, you know, nothing is never as good as live.
Yeah.
So you know, making sure that, you know, that they ask questions, and something like all coaches have said to me, ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And so obviously instilling that in them to do so. And for me, the whole ethos about this is it's a journey. It's a journey of bringing them through bit by bit by bit, all the way to wherever their talent takes them.
Yeah, you mentioned something there, very profound there, which is the role of education. As something that a coach has got to deliver, to bring about any development or pursued development in the athlete. One of the great coaches of Great Britain, Frank Dick. I remember him, mentioning something succinctly like, coach the athlete, but educate the person. Now that's a philosophy that which I think is the central theme in coaching, as it were. You're imparting technical skills, but those technical skills will not hold if the person himself is not involved in it. You almost have to educate the person by raising their awareness and their understanding of what the tasks at hand and the goals that they are pursuing. Otherwise, if there's a variance there, then it becomes such a very difficult engagement, doesn't it, coaching? Now, with the social distancing, how do coaches, what do you say to coaches? How do they realize this? How do they realize coaching the athlete and educating the person? How can they do it?
Oh, difficult. I just think it's just virtually what we're doing here. We talk a lot to each other, and be willing to trust each other to say, how did you do this yesterday, or what was this yesterday? I still have coaches send their athletes down to me, because one of the things that we do is we try to locate people on our area rather than sending someone off to Timbuktu. They're traveling 5 hours on the train or whatever. We look for the person in the area, the local coach in the area who's good enough to carry out these procedures or carry out the task at hand, and you're in a dialogue with him. And I think one of the good things that the coaching thing board set up for us was the fact that we carried on those connections. And one of the philosophies you used to have to say, it's only as good as the people we left behind to carry on the next job and to carry on the next job, because they are being well educated in that system. And I think that's one of the biggest thing about when you go into a program like that is that you find this ability to relate to each other and to pass on those coaching cues and those coaching skills, and that we're all sharing. And everybody's not the same. but you're sure to get a nugget from someone. Yes, who's going to say something that you actually didn't quite consider. And I think one of the things that we found as well when we did get-togethers was the fact is that when people crossed over to different coaches, they actually understood a bit something different, because they were used to hearing the same patterns all the time, and then they were cued slightly different from the other side. So all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. So I think one of the things that the current environment that really is brought to us now is that, a lot of people are a lot more aware of what we're doing now. You can meet up on video and have a conversation and talk, and I think that also is playing its part. Like I says, the big issue for me is, you're missing that contact, that ability to inspire people when they're, when they've got the last 10 meters to go or something, the last 20 meters to go or something, and, even though we do have some sessions that you can hope that we do where we do a circuit session, and you can watch someone, going through the last part of the circuit, depending on the type of circuit it was you were giving them to do. So you can follow those things. But I've been involved for a while in coaching, like I said, long distance coaching. I have a young lady in Birmingham, and I think I have a couple elsewhere who would feed me videos all the time. I mean, it wasn't during this pandemic time, but basically we would do acceleration runs from a live camera feed, and he talking, and we were linking back all the time. So, just letting coaches know that everyone is under the same banner, if I want to use that, because we're all, at the mercy of our current situation, and basically that ability to communicate with each other. Because I think that's probably a big issue. If we communicate with each other, we will talk a different language, and together we will get stronger from that. And that's where we can actually use the current environment to say, well, hang on a minute, I've got a better connection now, because most of the time would be picking up the phone and whatever. Now you can actually have this connection and actually discuss all the things that can go wrong in this time.
Indeed. A couple of weeks back, we had a guest on the show, and they zeroed in, on what you're highlighting there, which is the need for coaches to speak to one another. Now, that is not the background of coaching. That's not cultural, and the history of coaching is different from that scenario, that need. So it would seem to me then that this situation that we find ourselves in here has dissuaded coaches from being lone rangers. Single warriors out there. They're working on their own, and the whole group is mine. I deal with everyone else, and so basically coaches now would be in a situation where they have to depend on other coaches to learn new strategies and new ways of doing things that people had not thought about before. Would that be true?
Absolutely. Well, you can look at it as a type of paradigm shift in what's going on in the world, isn't it? All of a sudden, we can't see. We're not there. We're there from a distance, and all your instincts are almost been taken away from you. I think one of the topics we had was developing the coaching eye. The coaching eye now is being developed from afar. Because we're totally reliant on the media to bring this thing forward. And again, sharing is easier in this mode, because you can put 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and you can put 2 or 3 or 4 coaches on there and have a discussion between each other. You don't really need to do set up presentations. So if you need to, you can still see it. But the idea is that, I used to say, what coaches try to do is die with their knowledge, because you just hang on with it for dear life, because you're trying to excel higher than the next person. Where I believe that you reach bigger heights actually share with each other, because the idea is to potentiate the athlete, not to actually be competing in the wrong way. Because that ability to develop the athlete is what we're all about, because the athlete is still centered. they're the ones that the focus is still on. And you know, and I think that, you know, I think if we learn that example first, then we will get the others. I remember visiting a coach, and he said to me, I will give you everything I know. And he sat down there, and we went through it for hours. He told me everything he knew. And then he looked at me barefaced, and he said to me, and I dare you to beat me. I dare you to bring your athlete and beat me. And I sat there with my mouth dropping on the floor. I was like, oh my God, is this a direct challenge? But, you know, as far as he's concerned, it was between, you know, how much I can learn. I think Frank Dick used to put one of those things, one of those phrases up. He said, the biggest advantage one coach has over another is to learn quicker. I think that's one of the things he used to put up. So, you know, but you only learn more by sharing more. And more, if you're confident enough in yourself to deliver, which is what we're doing, if you're confident enough to deliver, then you will deliver, because, you know, it's you with the athlete. It's always about the athlete.
Yeah. No, great there, Clarence. You see, something that you touched on there is, I know your background is sprints coaching, and most of what you are sharing here really is from the culture of the sprints coach, you know. But the situation of the lockdown and social distancing has affected the different athletic disciplines differently. You know, for instance, the middle distance and long distance, you know, community, they probably, you know, would say they haven't been affected that much, as, you know, in as much as maybe the poll voters would have been affected, because they rely on the facility at the track, and this facility is shut down. Now, those challenges then become to differ between the different discipline, the coaches of different disciplines. What's your view, you know, relative to sharing of information? You know, do people still remain within their discipline communities, or should coaches now look beyond their discipline communities to try and develop their strategies, coaching strategies?
I mean, it's very very difficult question, because you know, it's almost those communities have always, they've never really intermingled with other communities within their own system, definitely, but not outside of their own system. And in my experience, but again, I think that any forward moving coach would, you know, if he needs to succeed and he needs to find out what to do, he will cross that barrier. You'll do whatever it takes to find out the information and you know, get the athletes thinking and getting the coaches thinking, and you know, making sure that you have the right information and tools to go forward, and who can, you know, obviously, you know, give you that information, bridge that gap for you. I would always go out to a lot of people. I guess the difference, because in this country, the you know, sprint coaches and tend to be one community and everything is separate. While, let's say, if I was in the States, you know, you'd be a head high school teacher and you'd be doing the whole, you know, the whole shebang. And so then, you know, that would be easier done. But I think, Stan, the good thing about it is that I like to think I'm a coach first. And that doesn't mean I am just stuck in one area.
No.
Yes, I help people to get the best out of themselves, by educating them, by mentoring them, by, you know, all those little facets that I think that is really required, and I believe I can take those skills across any of the platforms, because you know, if I'd started from the beginning and the day one, what would I have done? I would have read, I would have done this, I would have made sure I'd done this, I would have gone to the next course. So to me, those things would be, you know, it's almost a necessity for a coach to be, you know, have that inquisitive, inquiring mind. And, you know, he's never satisfied with what he's learned, because that, you know, it's never enough, because, you know, what is perfection in our business? What is perfection? Because even if you won an Olympic gold medal, you always come back and say, I still want to do it again.
Precisely.
You never cut that off. So that ability, really, again, if you go back to the educational journey, that's all part of that. You know, you're educating yourself all the way through. One of the things I am staunched on as well is that coaches themselves need to do a lot of self-assessment.
Yeah.
And if it's not from them, have the courage to do it for somebody else. Because, you know, that dropped on me. I used to coach this guy who I think he came third in the World Juniors many, many years ago. And he came up to me one day and he said to me, he goes, okay, you're assessing me. Who's assessing you? I thought, oh, you cheeky so-and-so. But the idea was, you know, because sometimes you get in your little tent and you think you're God. You know, you're your castle and you're God and you know everything. And you know, the thing about it is that once athletes start to believe in you, they have the same ethos. They believe you're God. And you know, and when things doesn't go right, you know, then it's almost as though, you know, you've broken, you know, that massive rule. You know, you can't be wrong. Where they don't understand that, you know, in a lot of instances, you know, you go wrong first before you go right. You know, you turn little corners, and you try to eliminate those factors as much as possible. But having to find new ways and new creativity to doing things is actually what makes you, you know, in my opinion, that little bit of a better coach.
Yeah, talk about new things and the new ways of doing, you know, what you've been used to doing. Home coaching. Yeah. Yeah, home learning. Never mind that. You hear stories about that, the difficulty and the pleasures that the parents are going through with home learning. Now, you have a situation here, there's home coaching, because parents have got their talented child here, but the child cannot access their sports club, they cannot access their coach. And so the parents have to find ways now to ensure that the child continues with their development. What has happened in that space is parents are beginning to take on the coaching role as well, you know, from home, behind closed door or in the garden, you know, as it were. Now, if you are communicating as a coach, you're communicating to your athlete, and this time situation now is they're not on their own, they've got their parents, you know, in the background. They've got their parents that have got to carry out, if you like, your coaching eye. They've got the parent now that has got to extend your demonstration. You know, what's your view on that? How does that change the coaching philosophy, coaching perspectives, and the coaching strategies, you know, that people would have been used to?
I think it changes a lot. But I think from my experiences that when parents come to watch me coach, I always get involved. I always talk to them there and then. And some of them want to know what I'm doing. Some of them don't want to know what I'm doing. Because, you know, in my day, I don't think my parents have never seen me run once, because it wasn't the thing they did. But, you know, in our days, you know, it's completely different. People, you know, most of the athletes, especially the younger ones, I have athletes that go right down to 13 years old. Their parents are 100% involved. They're there all the time. They drive them there, etc., etc. So now, you know, on that side of the fence, some of them do have some idea because they stand and watch them all the time. So, and I think there's a couple that have parents who are more than involved, I think, at a very, very low level because of the club. So lots of them come and they were standing there for long periods of time, and all of a sudden, say, oh, why don't I just do a little assistant coach? And all of a sudden, before you know it, they've crept in the back door. What I do find that a lot of parents don't want to go any further because obviously they have commitments to work. You know, especially what's going on. We've been fortunate in this current time that, you know, we're not fortunate, unfortunate in lots of ways where parents are at home because of whatever reason they're at home and they have a better eye to cast upon the kids. But to me, there's also a risk in this as well. There's a bit of a risk going on here as well, because if you think that if some person's got a normal terrace house or detached house, they can, you know, go in the yard or go in the background or whatever. But if you're living in flats and stuff like that, how do you then actually, you know, do a lot of these things? And, you know, you might have your parents say, you don't jump in this house or whatever. So, you know, them having that. Yeah, exactly. So them having that sympathetic eye towards it and watching some of the stuff you've been doing, they can help interpret. Because I think that, you know, they're almost an integral part of what we do now. You can't, parents will be there. And getting, you know, understanding them and actually, you know, they're understanding what you're doing also helps, because you can get the opposite effect happening, that, you know, you're coaching someone, then they go home and go, oh, I don't like that coaching, and you know, you got this sort of thing going on in the middle where, you know, you're involving them and engaging them all the time, and what they're doing, you know, prior to this would help with a lot of this. So now that in this situation, and you did say, for instance, I asked someone to do, you know, practice a drive run going upstairs, but just from a walking perspective, they would have seen us doing it at my lane where we are on the stairs, etc. So they will have an idea what it is they're trying to, and they will form proper risk assessments of what's going on up those stairs and why they're doing it. Yeah, so totally in for parents, and if once they go to the track and if they're sitting there, they need to just be more active in that role, along with their lifestyle and their work allows it.
Yeah, what I've found, you know, well, I've always involved parents, you know, in the athletes that I work with, but even more so now because they're the ones that you're going to get some kind of feedback also from during the week. If I want videos taken and sent to me, guess someone has got to do that, you know, but they've got to have the parameters of reference whilst doing that. That's something that's going to be useful.
Yeah. And
so engaging parents becomes part of the coaching strategy, you know, in the current circumstances.
Yeah.
What you know, what makes that difficult is, you know, the long-standing issue between parent and athlete.
Yeah.
Not many athletes like their parents to be involved in their training. Don't do it. You know, because they say the coach, they'll hear what, even if what you're telling them is what the parents told them, they'll listen to the coach and not listen to the parent. So it's a situation there that, you know, coaches now need to address so that the element of trust can also be passed on to the parents for them to do that. And I think it helps if the athlete can see their coach and their parents in meaningful conversation regarding the intervention that they're trying to bring to bear, you know, on the development of the child. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's, like I said, from day one, I try to bring them in, and they come all the time anyway. But day one, especially of the age groups that we're talking about, we try to bring them in so that we have that intervention. We talk to them, they understand, you know, you have that joke and a laugh, etc., etc. And now we're in this situation. If, you know, once the phone rings and it's coach or whatever, you know, they're already willing to listen because, you know, they know the instructions are coming from me and not from themselves, so they don't put up that barrier and so. But I guess the big issues with these things is the psychological part of it, and how, you know, that motivation, that, you know, what are the goals, and kids like goals, and they love to compete.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that element is not there when they're at home. Really, there's no competition there, unless I say to some of my athletes, I said, one of the girls did 15 press-ups today, you know, it's your turn. What can you do? And just trying to find little competitive edges, because I think that's the biggest problem that we're going to have throughout this time, or we have, depending on how soon we come out of it, but developing that competitive edge that they would normally have, and has been going for a long time, because they know exactly who it is they're competing against and when they're competing against them. And, you know, and to get that competitive edge in training and things like that, it's something that we have to work hard to instill from the situation that we're in now.
Thank you very much, Clarence. For those that have joined us in midstream, the discussion here is around the implications of social distancing, you know, to coaching and coaches. What does it mean? How do we cope? Coaches, by their very nature and their very role, are there, you know, to manage difficulties and overcome those difficulties relative to the training of their athletes, relative to any performance barriers that they come. So coaches that's what they do. However, this is a different ball game altogether when they're not able to do that because of social distancing. And joining me here, who's been with me to discuss that, is Clarence Callender, who himself, in case you missed the introduction there, was very instrumental working with the coaches, you know, in the England setup as a national coach mentor. And that's why he really is a very useful guest for us tonight to give us some of those nuggets that he brings in. Clarence, before we start winding down, strength and conditioning. That's a huge component of the athlete's development. What happens now with all this social distancing? What's your view? How can you, what insights can you give coaches on how to manage strength and conditioning intervention that athletes definitely need?
Oh, it's such a difficult thing, because some people are going to have the odd little dumbbell in their house and whatever, but just to make sure you get it right. And I think that's more for me, is getting the balance right once they decide to be at home. And again, I tend to get my technical model, I work with that. So for instance, plyometrics, we have a thing we call a jump circuit, where it's just basically focusing that area on plyometrics all the time. And you don't need a lot to do plyometric with. And this doesn't mean jumping on the table or whatever, but you can do low level plyometric from toe exercises, toe drills. We call it toe tapping, split drills, jump splits, burpees. Just keeping those things together, and just work hard in the general conditioning area. Now, one of the things that I work a lot with is yoga. That does a lot of that. You put yoga in there, and you can set a camera up. I can get in front of the camera, and they can copy, etc., and I can watch to see where they're at, and get a lot of strength moves from that. Pilates, just get involved with the things that because, like I said, based on the educational profile, I was saying these things are all been put into their programs already, so they will have some idea of these things all the time, and we were evaluating them all the time to see what levels they're at. So then now this thing has come along. We just have to define it a bit more and spend a bit more time working along that technical basis for the strength conditioning. Squats, hold a medicine ball in your hand, hold something in your hand, get a bottle, a couple of liters of water, hold it in your hand and squat with them. You can do the same thing by pushing them above your head. It's again, we're talking about creativity here, and how creative we can be within all of those aspects of running that we really want to really finite, really. I think for coaches as well, they have to decide, what they're going to be doing when they come out, because it's like before, let's say we would choose a major competition and work backwards, or choose a goal and work backwards. Now, there's no goal at the front. We don't know what the goals are, because we're still guessing. And to me, that's probably even a bigger thing, because it's like people talk about peaking, and sometimes this could be a real big topic here. Peaking. What does it actually mean? Yes, because sometimes it's like, hang on a minute, is that what we're talking about? So looking at that now, where people might just have to come straight out and expect to run fast instantly, and probably might only have 3 or 4 races, because I think you got to remember as well. I can't speak for countries abroad, but I know in England, when the weather gets bad, when you come up to run in late September, we don't run in September for a while for a reason, because the weather sometimes is very inhospitable in that time of year. So, it's like bringing that back and stepping back one and take another look and say,
Briefly, Clarence, we're winding down. We got just about 5 minutes or so. Briefly, unfortunately, track and field athletics is not, divorced, as it were, from injuries. What's your view? What's your take? What's your advice on medicals and athletes, at the moment in time in this situation?
As if they were injured and need to get to someone?
Yeah.
Oh.
What do they do with their recovery? It's post-injury, rehab and all that. What should coaches be looking at? What sort of thoughts should they have?
Oh dear, not to get there in the first place.
That's a good one, yeah.
just to be, not that you're cautious, but be more precise. And I think this is a key one: knowing your athlete, knowing what they know, or knowing what you think they know.
Yeah.
Just so when you do give an exercise or you do give something to do, you know it's going to be done correctly. Yes, we know there can be accidents, and it would be a question of what's the severity. For instance, it's highly unlikely we're going to pull a hamstring in those types of circumstances, but it's more likely to be a twisted ankle or a knee, crook knee, whatever it is that's coming. And and also making sure, even though because they're at home, so that what sort of recovery. If you're in a high intensity workout one day, it's not good to be going back into another one the next day. So close together. So understanding, that development of the athlete, can they handle 2 high intensity sessions back to back?
Yeah.
So we're actually looking at, your whole training strategy philosophy in a way to know that those rules will still apply whether we're outside or inside. Just that, it's a lot more sedate maybe, but this rules still apply. If you work someone to a certain level, you have to make sure, you compensate for that and allow the body to compensate for all the work that you've done and move on to the next session. So they also have a lot of machines that they carry now. All the kids have these little massage machines and the rollers and whatever. And, we always say that after every training session, there should be a good stretching session, a good rub down, depending on if they're more experienced athletes, not so much the youngsters, then they can think about cold baths, and they do the general looking after themselves. And one thing I think is paramount as well in this current environment, that they get at least 8 hours sleep, because they want to stay up and talk to their friends all day, and they don't get the rest required for the whole recovery system to start. So
I think you've hit it there, Clarence, by saying the best thing is don't get injured in the first place.
Yes.
But in case that has happened, and the professionals are still out there. Most professionals, with medicals and rehab, these therapists are available online. They are super duper therapists from Perfect Balance Clinic, and they are offering services online. And there are many others in many places. So that facility is there for those athletes that need to take care of themselves, because I think it's important that the injuries are treated. Even under these conditions, they must get the appropriate professional, services to bring up, so that they get fully recovered. Right, Clarence. Now, there's one tradition on this show, which is you give your viewers your 3 tips. From all that you have shared, if you were going to summarize it, what would be your 3 tips that you'd give coaches out there? It could be coaches or parent coaches, regarding how to manage the difficulties that we find ourselves in and how to overcome them. Your 3 top tips, Clarence, let's fire them.
Communicate. I think communication is key. You need to be on top of them all the time. A little example, I had an athlete before, and basically he would call me at 2 or 3 in the morning. And I remember I went to one of the other coaches and I said, "Oh God, what is with this thing?" He says, "The good ones always communicate. They want to know everything that's done. It's like, how can I get this done? How can I do that?" So the feedback from that communication is one of my key ones. Creativity. It's the environment has changed totally. It's almost like the first man to the well drinks. You have to be creative in understanding your environment and to work within that environment and to make sure. And I top it all off. That 3rd tip for me is actually the whole journey is educate.
Yeah, brilliant. That's 2 there. Do I have one more? Yeah, communicate, create, be creative, super duper. They're terrific ones. Can I have one more, Clarence, please?
And really be strong mentally. Have a strong mental attitude. that this will all work.
Yeah.
Yes, be strong in your mind. And, because the goals post have almost changed. It's in your head now. It's in your head now. And it's almost as though that's where the goal is. It's up here to make sure that you do all these things.
Yeah. Well, Clarence, it's been brilliant having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing and giving some insights to coaches. Really useful insights there. And for those that have, if in case you've got questions there, you still have questions for Clarence, please do leave your questions in, and we'll take time to respond to to those questions, including if in case they are parents and you want to know how do I progress as a coach, what structures do I go to, where do I go to increase my knowledge as a coach, drop the questions there and Clarence will have time to respond and give it. So what's left now is for Clarence and I to say thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We will see you again on Sunday. I've got another guest here that's here, a world junior champion that will be telling us about the struggles that may come to athletes when they win the big one when they're still young. Bye-bye from me.
Bye. Take care. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.